Hello, this is Eye on Africa with me, Yena Lee. Your headlines on the continent tonight. Almost 600 Nigerian students return home after being evacuated from Romania and Poland. They had been studying in Ukraine until Russia's invasion. Many report the struggles they faced to leave the country due to discrimination at the border. Cape Town City Hall lights up in blue and yellow, the colours of the Ukrainian flag, despite the South African government's efforts to stay neutral in the conflict. Our correspondent tells us more about Pretoria's historic ties with Moscow. And we take a look at how Tunisia's economic downturn is affecting small businesses. Political crises and a pandemic have impacted the lives of employers and employees. Some employers blame the government for not doing more to help. First, almost 600 Nigerian students have touched down in Abuja on flights from Romania and Poland. They were studying in Ukrainian universities until Russia's invasion of the country. Scores of non-white foreign students have spoken about the racist treatment they faced while trying to escape the ongoing conflict. Some say they were refused from trains, bomb shelters, and rejected by border guards. Lauren Berstecker has the story.
As they stepped onto the tarmac at Abuja's international airport, these Nigerian students breathed a sigh of relief. Exhausted by their ordeal, many were still wearing their winter clothes and recounted their traumatic experience as they witnessed the start of the Russian offensive.
There were a lot of heavy artillery, missiles, bombs, and all of that. Like in the state where I stay, it's desecrated. Like there is literally my school. Everywhere is literally just bad. It's really bad. And we just had to leave because we couldn't stay there.
Over 400 Nigerians were flown back Friday from Bucharest on a government-chartered flight after making their way from Ukraine to Romania. A harrowing, sometimes days-long journey where some say they experienced racist treatment and were arbitrarily prevented from boarding trains or buses. Yet the students were thankful to finally be home.
I'm one of the lucky ones that were able to get out because for now, some people are still stuck in different cities, especially in Sumi, where the war is really going on, and they can't leave the city.
Nigerian stories of discrimination at the border echoed similar accounts by other foreigners trying to flee Ukraine. And early this week, both the African Union and the UN raised concern over the situation. Faced with mounting controversy, Ukraine's foreign minister said a hotline had been set up for African and Asian students looking to leave the country.
While hundreds of Nigerians have managed to return home, others are eager to make the opposite journey. Many have reportedly knocked on the Ukrainian embassy's door asking to sign up as volunteers in the fight against Russian aggression. Our correspondent Sam Olukoya reports.
Nigerian youths have been going to the Ukrainian embassy in Nigeria to seek enlistment into the Ukrainian army to fight the invading Russian army. The Nigerians are heeding the call of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that people around the world should join in the fight against Russia. The Nigerians willing to fight for Ukraine range from former soldiers who said they have a lot of combat experience to ordinary Nigerians who want to serve in the army. Media reports quoted an official of the Ukrainian embassy in Nigeria are saying that hundreds of Nigerians have so far reported at the embassy seeking enlistment. The prospect of going to Ukraine to earn the same salary as Ukrainian soldiers is one of the attractions for the Nigerians. Some of them said the economic situation in Nigeria is quite difficult and they are willing to escape the hardship, even if it means risking their lives to go and fight in Ukraine. But they are faced with some hurdles. Newspaper reports quoted an official at the Ukrainian embassy as saying that they will need about $1,000 for air ticket and to procure a visa to Ukraine. Some of the Nigerians said they cannot afford this amount. Those who can afford the money are likely to find it difficult traveling to Ukraine due to flight problems caused by the war. An official at the Ukrainian embassy said if recruited, the Nigerians will serve as regular soldiers and not as mercenaries.
Meanwhile, Hungary's government has agreed to take in Ghanaian students who had until now been taking classes in Ukraine. Hungarian authorities said several universities will allow students to transfer and pay the same fees. Since the start of the conflict, hundreds of Ghanaian students have managed to cross over to neighbouring countries. But with the future of their education hanging in the balance, many have not flown back home yet. Next, Cape Town's City Hall has been lit up in the colours of the Ukrainian flag. The mayor belongs to the opposition Democratic Alliance party, and this is a show of solidarity that goes against the government's current balancing act. South Africa abstained at the UN's vote criticising Russia's invasion last week. Pretoria has a long history with Moscow, notably Russia's documented support of the anti-apartheid movement. Our correspondent Nadine Theron has more.
In Cape Town, South Africa's official opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, lit up its city hall in the colours of the Ukraine to show its open support for the country since Russia's invasion. But members of the ruling party, the African National Congress, attended several events this week to celebrate its 30-year relationship with Russia. Russia was the liberation movement's most faithful ally in the apartheid struggle. It provided training, equipment and money to the ANC's military wing, and former President Thabo Mbeki studied in Moscow, while embattled former President Jacob Zuma visited Russia often. But there's another reason South Africa's hands are tied, and that's its debts with BRICS, the partnership with Brazil, Russia, India and China. South Africa has taken out about 10 different billion-dollar loans with the BRICS New Development Bank, the latest for its COVID response of $1 billion. Mounting pressure from the West is putting President Cyril Ramaphosa in a difficult position. The United States President Joe Biden is currently in talks with Ramaphosa and International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor about the situation. And on Thursday, the acting American ambassador to South Africa quoted the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu to urge Pretoria to take a stand. Todd Hoskell repeated the words, "In the fight between the oppressed and the oppressor, not choosing sides is siding with the oppressor."
Time now for a quick look at other stories we're following for you tonight. Prosecutors in Tanzania have dropped terrorism charges against Freeman Mbowe. The country's main opposition leader has now been released after more than 7 months in custody. Observers say his release is a positive sign for political freedom. Mbowe is the chairman of the Chadema party and has been outspokenly critical of late President John Magufuli. A court in Morocco has upheld a 6-year jail sentence against journalist Omar Radi. The dissident was found guilty of spying and rape, accusations he denies. Before Friday's verdict, he told the court, I quote, "My only fault is to have demanded independent justice." Reporters Without Borders has called for Radi's immediate release, saying this case confirms the authorities' bias against independent journalism. In Libya, an armed group linked to authorities has released 2 ministers of the new rival government. Despite this, tensions remain high between the two cabinets. Thursday, the parliament swore in Prime Minister Fatih Bashagha and his ministers. All the while, the incumbent Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah refuses to step down. Friday, the UN's top official in Libya offered to mediate between the two sides. And finally, let's focus on Tunisia's economic crisis. The North African country is struggling to recover from the pandemic and a political crisis. Public debt is soaring, as is inflation, making life difficult for business owners and everyday workers. Our correspondents Lilia Blaise and Hamdi Talili filed this report.
After 10 years of fighting to keep his business afloat in Gasrin in the country's neglected interior, Khalid has only one depot left. It's now filled with his equipment for painting buildings after he was forced to close his business in 2020.
I brought all my machines here because I had to leave my workplace. I couldn't pay the rent anymore.
There are about 20,000 small and medium-sized businesses in Tunisia. Almost 13% have shut down because of the pandemic. Like Khalid, many didn't get enough support from banks or the state.
We know it's not the state's priority to support entrepreneurs with the current crisis, especially in inland regions. It's impossible for me to sell my equipment. It's almost 10 years of work. I always hope to start again. It's a hope which is more of a dream at the moment.
Tunisia's economic troubles are deepening. Even middle-class households have a lot less to spend.
I have an application, and each time I spend some money, I have to put it in here. We want to save up because we can't make it otherwise.
Inflation is over 6%. We follow Helle to the local grocer. She now avoids supermarkets because she doesn't want to be tempted to spend on luxuries. But even at smaller shops, prices are high.
See, it's 10 dinars per pack, while 2 or 3 months ago it was 7.5, which was already expensive. But 10, it's not cheap at all.
The government's currently negotiating with the International Monetary Fund for a new loan. The pressure's on and the stakes are high.
Time is against everyone now for public and private businesses and entire sectors of the economy. If they don't get back to work, the situation will continue to get worse.
Tunisia needs nearly 6 billion euros to meet its payment obligations in 2022.
That's it for Eye on Africa. More international news coming up next with Julia Kitten.